to learn.
To learn.
Got it? All right.
Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live.
Everybody's got a right to live. To live. Everybody's got a right to dream. To dream. Everybody's got a right to love. To love. Everybody's got a right to learn. To learn. Everybody's got a right to live. To live. Everybody's got a right to do.
Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to
Welcome, everybody. If you're looking for the spiritual home of the movement, you found the right place. We have a very, very special service tonight, Freedom Shul service. We're so glad to be here and be joined by the leaders from the Freedom Shul. So we're just going to kick things off and have the way we do with our land recognition. Kate?
Hi, everyone. Joining you tonight from Indakina, which is the name of the traditional territory of the Abandonment people and what is also known as Vermont, on the shores of Lake Champlain. And every time we assemble as a community, we welcome and encourage everyone to find the name of the people whose lands they inhabit as a ritual of remembrance, reverence, and resolve. You can find these names by, if you don't already know, by entering them into the link that is going to be in the chat or in the comments. Tonight for this service for Sukkot, Sukkot is a holiday that's all about our relationship with the land. It's a harvest celebration, a holiday to spend time in and with the natural world and to deepen our connection with the many kinds of life and creation that surround us and sustain us. For us tonight, that makes Sukkot a time to recommit ourselves to solidarity with all of those forced off their land and the land of their ancestors, with those whose own sacred connection to the land has been denied and attacked to secure greater profits for the powerful. So please do share with us the names of the peoples whose land you inhabit, and you can find that out by entering where you are into the link in the chat, and it should show you. And I think I'm passing it to Alicia to share our mission.
The Freedom Shul of the Poor is a sibling of the Freedom Church of the Poor, and its mission is the same: to be a spiritual home for movement leaders and a place to help nurture moral leadership in the struggle to end poverty, systemic racism, ecological devastation, militarism, and the false moral narratives of religious nationalism. Freedom Shul is a new and evolving project, bringing the sacred traditions and teachings of the Jewish faith to bear on the building of a movement to end poverty and into conversation with the liberatory essence of other religions and faith traditions. Freedom Shul is for everyone: Jewish leaders searching for community and a spiritual home, rooted in a movement led by poor and dispossessed people, as well as anyone else who finds meaning and connection within its metaphorical and, in this case, virtual walls. The hope is that by coming together through Freedom Shul, all of us, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, and more, can discover new depths and dimensions of our own religious and faith traditions and what they have to teach us about the divine call for justice. Freedom Shul began last spring when a group of Jewish movement leaders joined together to organize a virtual Freedom Seder for the Jewish holiday of Passover. What emerged was a powerful night of prayer, reflection, and community building with over 100 people from across the country, including many leaders of the Poor People's Campaign and grassroots organizations. We hope that Freedom Shul will continue to deepen its practice in the year ahead with services like tonight and with another Passover Seder next spring.
Hi, I'm Beth Sandweiss. I'm Noam's mom, and I am going to lead you in, please join me in singing a nigun, this is a chant or music without words. So I'm going to sing this nigun, and you can join me when you feel like you want to. Okay. Ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 la
And our scripture reading is from Leviticus 23. Live in temporary shelters for 7 days. All native-born Israelites are to live in such shelters, so your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live in temporary shelters when I brought them out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So Moses announced to the Israelites the appointed festivals of the Lord.
Hey y'all, sorry. It looks like we're having some technical difficulties getting to Facebook, so I'm just gonna, before we go any further, I don't want to I want to share as much as possible. So if we're gonna just take a minute, pause, and go to Facebook Live so that we can make sure that we're reaching more people, we're gonna do that. Okay. Sorry about that. Apologies to those on the internet for that were watching on Facebook Live. We are back. Should be live on Facebook now. So we're going to run the service from here without our fancy switcher software. But we're learning as we lead here. Pass it now to Noam. Is that right?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And hey, everybody. Welcome if you're just tuning in to Freedom Shul and to our celebration of the Jewish holiday of Sukkot. And I am calling in from Montclair, New Jersey, on Lenape land with my mom here and my dad over here, and we're sitting in our family sukkah that my dad built this last week, in which we've been dining in and eating in and celebrating in the last couple days. The Jewish holiday of Sukkot is known in English by different names. Some know it as the Feast of Booths, others know it as the Feast of Tabernacles. Some call it Harvest Festival. Sometimes it's just known as the festival. And we celebrate it every year, just as the summer is turning into fall, and it represents the completion, the end of two cycles. It represents the end of the seasonal harvest, when our ancestors reap the abundance of the hard work of the growing seasons. And it also represents, in some ways, the end, the punctuation mark to the high holidays, to the Jewish New Year of Rosh Hashanah and the great day of atonement of Yom Kippur, which we celebrated together with Freedom Shul a few weeks ago. So Sukkot then is kind of where everything comes to a head. On one level, this is a time for celebration and for joy. It is during Sukkot. We can feel viscerally the truth of Dr. King's words when he said that we're all of destiny. It is in the Sukkah where we are reminded that within this web of mutuality, there is enough for everyone. Like literally, there is enough food and water and money and housing and medicine and more for every person on this planet. And it is on Sukkot, as we sit in sukkahs like the one I'm sitting in, and feel the air and hear the sounds and smells of the fragrances around us, that we can no longer deny or hide from this truth of the actual abundance of the world. So on another level, though,
apologies to those on the internet for that were watching on Facebook Live. We are back, should be live on Facebook now. So we're going to run the service from here without our fancy switcher software. But we're learning as we lead here. Pass it now to Noam. Is that right?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And hey, everybody. Welcome if you're just tuning in to Freedom Shul and to our celebration of the Jewish holiday of Sukkot. And I am calling in from Montclair, New Jersey, on Lenape land with my mom here and my dad over here, and we're sitting in our family sukkah that my dad built this last week, in which we've been dining in and eating in and celebrating in the last couple days. The Jewish holiday of Sukkot is known in English by different names. Some know it as the Feast of Booths, others know it as the Feast of Tabernacles. Some call it the Harvest Festival. Sometimes it's just known as the festival. And we celebrate it every year, just as the summer is turning into fall, and it represents the completion, the end of two cycles. It represents the end of the seasonal harvest, when our ancestors reap the abundance of the hard work of the growing seasons. And it also represents, in some ways, the end, the punctuation mark to the high holidays, to the Jewish New Year of Rosh Hashanah and the great day of atonement of Yom Kippur, which we celebrated together with Freedom Shul a few weeks ago. So Sukkot then is kind of where everything comes to a head. On one level, this is a time for celebration and for joy. It is during Sukkot, after all, where we see all around us the evidence of the abundance of the world. When we build the sukkah and spend a full week eating under its canopy, we are reminded how interconnected we truly are. All of us, to one another and to the natural world around us. In the sukkah, we can feel viscerally the truth of Dr. King's words when he said that we are all connected in an inescapable network of mutuality, that we are all tied together in a single garment of destiny. And it is in the Sukkah where we are reminded that within this web of mutuality, there is enough for everyone. Like literally, there is enough food and water and money and housing and medicine and more for every person on this planet. And it is on Sukkot as we sit in sukkahs like the one I'm sitting in and feel the air and hear the sounds and smells of the fragrances around us, that we can no longer deny or hide from this truth of the actual abundance of the world. So on another level, though, of this observance of Sukkot, we're commanded by God to consider something else. We're told to look back and remember the great freedom struggles of our ancestors. Not only that, but we are commanded to reenact the struggle every year by building the Sukkah. So in the scriptural passage that Anna just read from Leviticus, God tells the Israelites to build booths and sukkahs every year, quote, in order that future generations will know that I made the children of Israel live in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. And tonight we want to look back in two ways. In the biblical sense, there's something so powerful about this commandment to build a sukkah so that we remember that earlier generations built their own sukkahs as they wandered through the desert after making a break for freedom. In this commandment to remember, we recognize that our ancestors and their freedom movement left Egypt as homeless refugees. We are reminded that God chose these people, these poor and dispossessed people, not only to escape slavery, but to help build a new covenant with God, a new social order built on justice and on peace. And most incredibly, we're reminded that these people began to build this new society as they wandered through the desert, living in tent encampments, living in these ancient shanty towns on the edge of empire. It was in sukkahs, just like the one I'm sitting in, where our ancestors drew up the blueprints for a new society and struggled to make it so. There's so much in this story pointing us toward the agency and leadership of the poor. This story of the Sukkot teaches us so much about where God resides and who God sides with, and about who can, out of necessity and with nothing to lose from the current structure of society, be the leaders of a movement to end poverty and injustice. So this is one kind of looking back that we're called to do together tonight. And as we celebrate the Sukkot, there's another kind of looking back that we want to do. Because to think about what it means to build a sukkah in our time is a really important question. And as we build sukkahs in our own time, we then really need to think about and remember the struggles that we ourselves have emerged out of, and which have helped to shape and form the movement that we're building today. And so I'm so excited to share this space tonight with leaders from the National Union of the Homeless, Phil Ryder and Sabina Martin, who over the years have led powerful housing struggles and organizing drives of the poor and homeless in what I think we could call the modern sukkah struggles of our day. You know, these sukkah struggles led by poor and homeless people striving to build a better world out of tent encampments and abandoned houses and more, just like the ancient Israelites. So I'll stop there, and I'm so pleased to pass it on to Reverend Rabbi Sabina Martin.
Thank you so much, Noam, and thank you, everyone. Yes, like the sukkah, like the booths, tent cities are a type of political organizing, right? It's a form of protest, and especially important for today's struggles of the poor and homeless. This is so timely, so biblical, so right on for this moment in current history that we are all witnessing. We continue to witness the further dismantling of the welfare state and the deepening crisis of neoliberal policies. A tent city paper reported not too long ago, written by Willie Baptist, Kristen Colangelo, myself, and Anthony Prince, states that these policies, all brought about by the systemic economic crisis of global capitalism, right? Today, we are witnessing in biblical proportion deteriorating conditions, humanitarian health and housing crisis, climate change, and economic theft. We can therefore expect mounting social dislocations, global instability, and rising mass resistance. we can expect that this resistance will assume many forms, including all kinds of survival tactics, such as in the pro-liberation and spread of illegal homeless encampments in major and small cities around the world. In Leviticus, God is telling the people to build the desert booths, the dwelling tents, as a way to freedom, somewhat like we are witnessing today as people lose their homes, but at the same time struggle to survive, while at the same time fighting to build unity among the poor, to unite the poor, the dispossessed, to demand the right to housing and the right to live. In 1989, the Housing Now March was organized by the union. The late Ron Casanova led the Exodus marches from New York City's Tompkins Square Park, along with others who had left their tents or booths to join the 2-week march. It rained the whole time. Marchers made their way into Washington, D.C., while there were 2 heart attacks and 3 miscarriages along the way. They made their way into Washington, D.C., only to be turned away from housing yet again. And we were left no other choice but to take the last resort given to us, which was, you can stay here for 2 days on a wet ground in the back of the RFK Stadium on the Anacostia River that never dried. For the whole 2 days we were there, in back of an AIDS testing clinic. But it was there that the blessings happened when we band together once again to turn up the street heat. We marched through the streets and chanted. We left with no food, but food arrived that evening. Churches brought us everything we needed. We had fruits and bread and water and juice. Our unity in the field under great pressure was used. We used our words and turned them into action, chanting, "You only get what you organize to take." The following morning, we got into line, got into formation, and headed to the staging area of the Housing Now March. So in the film Takeover, you see what we accomplished. Ron Casanova represented the people that day. The Exodus marchers, who marched for 2 weeks, 450 miles to be free, to build the booths, to speak about our freedom. So today, as we celebrate the Festival of Booths, the tent cities, in remembrance of the Ron Casanovas today, and these tent cities that are cropping up all across the US as a way to our freedom, a way of resistance, and a way to build power. And I'm going to pass it over to my comrade, my Jewish brother, Phil Ryder.
Thanks so much, Sabina. Thanks so much. So like Sabina, I too have stories of encampments and tent cities from the Philadelphia, Delaware Valley Union of the Homeless, approximately 40 days encampment at the state office building in Philadelphia on the corner of Broad and Spring Garden in the summer of 1991, to a trip to the second National Survival Summit of the Up and Out of Poverty Now Coalition in the summer of 1992 in Detroit, Michigan, where the Michigan Welfare Rights Organization was in the midst of what they called Operation Michigan Storm, to protest welfare cuts by setting up tent cities in 4 points throughout the state of Michigan, including one at the state capitol, to many other housing takeovers, a church takeover, freedom tours, and tent cities. Of DHS, Department of Human Services, taking children from protesting mothers, of the city turning water off from fire hydrants, much needed by tent cities, to evictions, of summits, meetings, convenings where leaders from across the country and world swapped stories and compared notes of their experiences with tent cities and sleep outs. In these struggles and convenings, I and many others experienced a loss of innocence, a stealing by fire, a spiritual experience. We made commitments to this movement. We organized our lives around this movement, dedicated to this movement. On a holiday like this one, we are called not just to remember that these past events happened, not just to draw inspiration from the fact that they happened, but to learn the lessons from them, the real guidance for our work today. The truth is we can't navigate the adversity and attacks that rain down on our people and our organizing without the knowledge that comes from looking back to these experiences and their lessons. And the reality is that leaders of encampments have always made studies and constructed and attended schools to look back at previous times when those traveling from slavery to freedom made camp in temporary, fragile, field, desert, or urban huts. We've looked to the previous campaigns, treks, encampments in tent cities. We've looked to the Underground Railroad, which inspired the movement to end slavery. We've looked to what W.E.B. Du Bois called the General Strike, when the enslaved Black workers en masse in the hundreds and thousands poured across the Union line, setting up tents as part of the camp of the Northern armies. We've looked to Hoovervilles, Rooseveltburgs, and the Bonus Army encampment in DC during the Great Depression. We've looked to the original Poor People's Campaign, Resurrection City, that's marked on the poster for tonight's service and is hanging on the wall of the Sukkah behind Nome there. We've seen that all concessions won came through struggle, and that often what was given was not all that was what was wanted, and what was often provided in ways that further divided us. The struggles of the poor are struggles for survival, for transformation. The forms of struggle, be they tent cities, encampments, housing takeovers, eviction defenses, emerge out of dire conditions and come up against the violence of empire, of government, of state apparatus, defending, as they always do, the status quo, the law of the land, property, and which are hell-bent on keeping these struggles, these forms of struggle, divided. Leaders forged in earlier rounds of struggle, earlier rounds of tents, employ lessons learned, commitment built, connections made, and competencies developed in giving leadership to the emergent forms of struggle so that they can sustain, meet up with each other, coagulate into a powerful force, a new and unsettling force. There is much that has happened, does happen, and needs to happen in and through these survival tents, these fragile field, desert, and urban huts. There is protest, which calls attention to the hypocrisy of poverty amidst plenty and abandonment amidst abundance. There are projects of survival, which provide for basic need, shelter, food, and community for those in isolation, breaking their isolation. And there is political education, the education, training, and forging of leaders. And there is a charting out of a politically independent path from the two-party system and all representatives of Wall Street. In the actions of those who out of necessity take up tents and build encampments, there is a leadership for the rest of society, foreshadowing even more massive battles and struggle to come. Through the ups and downs, the victories and defeats, the advances and retreats, the real fruits of the harvest, the real victory lies in ever-growing organization and unity of the poor. The real fruits of struggle are lessons and leaders who carry these lessons and lead in the organization of the poor. The collective action of the poor is an unsettling force. It breaks isolation. It rallies resource and abundance to the cause of the poor. And on the occasions where that rallying of resource is insufficient, it provides lessons for future rounds of struggle, our moment and those to come. Finally, I want to say that on this holiday, we celebrate the growth that has happened for the harvest to ripen, for the abundance to have been constructed. We also celebrate the growth that has happened in these temporary, fragile field, desert, and urban huts. We celebrate the leadership and organization that serves as foundation for a broad and powerful movement that will enable this abundance to be shared by all.
That was so powerful, y'all. I just feel like everyone should be hearing this right now, but grateful to have that those lessons from everyone. And I think we did plan to take a little bit of time to invite some folks in the audience to engage and share your thoughts and response. So we'll go ahead and do that now.
Greetings, sisters and brothers. Alex here, joining in celebration on this holy day. I'm very grateful for these meditations and for showing us how such an ancient practice is so relevant for today, and for attuning our sensitivities and our practice to today. One thing that occurs to me is that what's special about today, this construction of these temporary shelters, it highlights the fact that they're supposed to be temporary. That anytime that we're unhoused and unsheltered, that's never supposed to be a permanent thing. We're always supposed to be on our way home. And we treat so many people in our society as if that is not the case, that there is no home for them. And this holiday, I think, wants to insist on how that's false. That anytime we might be in some sort of in-between time or transition through tragedy, through liberation, then there's still a destination that we're getting towards. And they didn't leave people behind in the wilderness. The community came; they got home together, and that seems to be the call for us today. Is the way that any of us are going to be able to feel at home in our world and our society? Is if we've brought everyone home. And so thank you for illuminating that for me today, and may all unsheltered people be sheltered in security and in community.
Thanks, Alex. Maybe one more thought from the group before we move on. Got some stuff to do still, but anyone has anything on their hearts or minds?
Just jump in for a second. I was thinking a little bit about the framing that Noam put in front of us in terms of this festival of booths, this harvest festival where we celebrate and recognize the abundance around us. And I think it really connects with, the words from Sabina and from Phil, and this point that Alex just made of just that homelessness doesn't have to be and is not God's will, and there is enough, and that we can see that all around, and we can see that particularly when we're as close to nature and as close to God as we are in this season and in other seasons. And so just thinking about this abundance, this lie of scarcity, this lie that if God wanted there to be no homelessness and to not have everyone reach the promised land, then God would have made more when it clearly has to do with systems and structures of empire, systems and structures of the wealthy and billionaires who hoard those resources and hoard that abundance, and therefore allow for the abandonment of people in the midst of that, and how just immoral and wrong that all is. But what's so powerful about this group of people coming together. So just thinking about abundance today.
Thanks, Reverend. Thanks, y'all. This has been really powerful. A lot to think about. And I think now we're going to move ahead. A very special song by Freedom Shul's own Alicia Swords. Do you want to say anything about this song, Alicia, before I play it?
I can paste some lyrics in the Facebook chat and on the Zoom, so you can go ahead and play it.
Okay, great.
Wow, thanks to Alicia for playing that. It's so beautiful.
My pleasure.
So we're going to just transition into a little bit of the Sukkot ritual. Not that all of this has been, but a little bit of maybe the traditional ritual. And so my dad is actually going to just kind of walk us through the Sukkah for a second. My mom is going to lead a couple of the blessings, and then we'll close out the night with sort of Jewish prayers to the people that we'll talk about in a second. So, how are you, Abba?
Okay, hi. So Sukkot is, my name is Aaron Back, and I'm Noam's dad. Sukkot is very much a family festival, and we thought we'd just sort of give you a flavor of the Sukkah that has been traditional in the family from which I sprang and that we've incorporated into our family's life. So as you can see, it's often got 3 sides or 4 sides. The important aspect that has already been mentioned several times is impermanence. This Sukkah has only to stand for 7 days and should not stand beyond 7 days. Many a source of Jewish jokes about the low bar for the construction ethic here. And the other aspect of it that's important is it should be open to the stars, again, to be connected to nature. It's also, many different customs. So some Sukkot, which is the plural of a Sukkah, are just walls and there's no decoration, there's no other things here. It has been our tradition to hang fruit, again, for the harvest festival and vegetables. So we have a variety of fruits and vegetables which add color to the sukkah. We have evergreens that are the greenery through which we can see the stars. And then we have paintings or pictures. These happen to be painted by my great uncle who grew up in Jerusalem. Again, animal forms, nature. A new tradition in our family sukkah is the Poor People's Campaign posters here, which has already been cited. We have 3 of them here, including the original Resurrection City Sukkah and other paintings. And then we come to this, which is traditional in many Sukkot, which is called an Ushibizim. An Ushibizim in the ancient language of Aramaic means to invite. And the traditional custom is each night of the 7 days of Sukkot is to invite another one of your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, David, to the Sukkah. You might notice it's a bit top heavy with men. And so there have been other traditions that Noam will refer to later. And that's pretty much our Sukkah. But again, everybody's Sukkah is different and individual. And I think the only thing that we hold in as a kind of a unyielding tradition is the impermanence and all the symbolism of that.
Great, thank you, Abba. Hopefully my cinematography was up to the task. All right, I'm going to turn it over to my mom to just lead us in a couple of the traditional prayers that we do during Sukkot. So here you go.
Okay. So one of the things that we do is we have what are called 4 species. One is the Lulav, and the Lulav is made up of a palm branch, 2 willows, and 3 myrtles, and an etrog, which is a citron. And what we do with it is we wave the Lulav and etrog every night of Sukkot, and we wave them in the direction south, north, east, up, down, and west. And what that signifies, a couple of things. One is the traditional understanding is that the divine is everywhere. And a mystical understanding of this is an embodied understanding that the Lulav, as I'm holding it here, is like our spine, and the etrog is our heart. And so I like this understanding in the words of Joan Halifax, who's a Zen master, that in order to struggle, we need a strong back and a soft heart. So with our strong back and soft heart, I'll wave the Lulav, and we all can also welcome in the different places. So I'll wave it to the south and bring in the heart, welcoming in to the north, to the east, up, down, west, drawing back into the heart. And I'll say the prayer for the Lulav and Etrog, which is Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu tilat Lulav. Blessed are you, source of presence, Shekhinah, indwelling, who has sanctified us with her commandments and commanded us regarding the shaking of the Lulav. And then the Shehechianu blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu l'azman hazeh. We bless the source of life who has allowed us to arrive at this moment.
Beautiful. Well, thank you both to my parents, and I feel like a proud son sharing this space with them. And the last thing we're going to do sitting in this sukkah is every Sunday Freedom Church does a prayers for the people. And one thing that my dad alluded to is this old tradition in the sukkah called Ushibizim, which as he was saying is the bringing in, the inviting in of our ancestors, our forebearers. And in the most traditional ritual, it's the men forebearers. as he was saying, but many over the years in Jewish communities have brought in that tradition out to our women forebearers, to comrades, to friends, to family, to all those who have come before us and are in our midst today that we want to invite in. So I want to just extend an invitation to everybody on the Zoom and everybody in the Facebook to think for a moment about their own Ushibizim, their own fallen friends and compatriots and comrades, family members, those who are no longer with us, as well as those who may be with us and maybe we haven't been able to share space with them over the last year and a half for reasons of distance and of safety and of health. And put that in the chat, put their names in the chat. We'll read their names, we'll invite them into this physical sukkah that I'm sitting in, we'll invite them into the metaphysical sukkah that we're all sitting in tonight. Great, so I see that we are inviting in Deborah Frazier, a native Washingtonian who fought fearlessly for human rights for her family and community as part of a larger movement to end poverty. She was a fierce, funny, wisecracking organizer, often seen running from one meeting to another, despite numerous ongoing health challenges as she fought against larger injustices in a blaze of unstoppable passion. May her memory be a blessing. We are inviting in Adam's sister, who died too young, into the beautiful sacred space of the sukkah. She would have loved it. Who else are we inviting in? I'm going to invite in my aunt, Dina Back, who also died too young, who was a revolutionary and a brilliant leader and scholar and thinker fighting for justice. Adam is inviting in the unsung saints in the movement to end poverty, fighting poverty, not the poor. Inviting in the spirit of Alex's father, unhoused by capitalism, housed now by the cosmos. Inviting in Nellie and Betty, Luella, Abi, and Angelina, Crazy Maggie, and the Sisters of the Society of the Precious Blood in Lesotho. Inviting in Alicia's father, Peter, who died a little more than a year ago, and has always asked how the children are doing. He would have loved this celebration. Inviting in Ron Casanova, a leader of the National Union of the Homeless and of the 400-mile march, Exodus March from New England and New York to the Housing Now March in DC in 1989. Inviting in brother Antonio and niece Nana, passed in 2020. Inviting in Dottie Stephen, leader with the National Welfare Rights Union. Inviting in Anna's grandparents, Laura, June, Ruben, Conrado, mentor Louis, and cousin Eduardo, who have all passed, along with her friends, families who were forced to leave their homes. Well, what a beautiful community we've invited into the sukkah with us. The sukkah is very full right now with beautiful leaders. There's space for more. So if you want to keep adding names into the chat, please do. And I'll hand it over to Adam for some announcements, I think.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was so amazing. A lot of tears over here. Just a few announcements. Of course, we always invite folks to sign up on the to receive more information, we'd love to be in touch. So I'm going to put this in the chat. Love to get in touch with you soon. So fill that out if you haven't already. And right after this service is La Iglesia del Pueblo. They put together a powerful service. So if you are able, please join at 7:30. Next week, we're going to have a joint service with La Iglesia where we do our communion. That's next Sunday at 6:30, a little bit later when we do our joint service. And of course, as always, this week we have Bible study at 6 p.m. You can find more information about all of this on the Kairos website. Of course, the movement marches on. We are gearing up for a lot of action and educating and prayer and just trying to turn things around here in this next coming year. So stay tuned to your state. Poor People's Campaign, plug in if you haven't already, and we'll see you out there in the streets and to make sure folks are taking good care of each other. And I'm gonna I'm so grateful for you, Noam, and your family, and for all of the Freedom Shul leaders for what you've shared. What a blessing. So maybe just as a way to take us out, Noam, would you mind just sending us on our way until the next Freedom Shul, right?
Thanks, Adam.
Get rid of all the highlights here. Here we go. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to invite one more person in, Kathleen Sullivan, who was in the chat and died fighting alongside the National Union of the Homeless and the National Welfare Rights Union when she was just 23 years old. So long live all of these loved ones and fallen fighters. And as Alicia put in the chat, here's to next year in a very crowded Sukkah with all of you and all of these courageous and wonderful people. We know the Sukkah is actually too crowded with folks seeking shelter and care and love in a world that is far too broken. But we also need to invite those folks and many others into our Sukkah as we build this movement. So thank you so much. Peace be with you, and we'll see you next week. Much love.
Bye, everyone. Okay. And Facebook Live. We'll see you later.